garages, backyards. Many cars are abandoned in fields and forests, and just like in the wild nature. So I always ask myself, why they do this? How can you do such things in relation to these luxurious legendary cars? Now let's just talk about the history of the Jaguar car brand while I show you these abandoned beauties. The British company Jaguar today specialized in the production of prestigious cars. However, in 1922, after registration, it bore the name Swallow Sidecars. It was engaged in the manufacture of sidecars for motorcycles. It was only 4 years later that the two founding partners, William Lyons and William Walmsley, decided to turn their attention to the development of car bodies. Jaguar's first automobile products were intended for the 7 sports car manufactured by Austin. The manufacturer achieves its first notable success in 1931, presenting its first 2 cars, the SS1 and the SS2, at the London Auto Show. London buyers loved them, and Jaguar spent the next few years developing premium sedans based on these models. Released in 1936, they were the first cars to bear the Jaguar name. After spending the entire Second World War as manufacturer of aircraft engines, the company returned to developing cars immediately after its end. At this time, the company changes its former name, taken as a new Jaguar, which until then designed only a line of luxury cars. The designation SS was too strongly associated with the Nazis at the time, and it could hurt the sales. In 1948, the first post-war sedan, the Jaguar MKV, was introduced, and shortly thereafter the firm released a model that became the fastest production car of the time. The XK120 was a top speed of 193 km. This series was continued in 1954, when the XK140 was born. The new cars was equipped with an engine that developed 180 to 192 horsepower and accelerates to 225 km per hour. Just imagine it in 1954. 3 years later, Jaguar introduced the XK150, which had a 253 horsepower, 3.5-liter engine. In 1972, Jaguar released the XJ12, which had a 12-cylinder engine producing 311 horsepower, and it's in 1972. It became the best among the all company's products for a long time until it was replaced by XJS HE in 1981. This model had an automatic transmission and a top speed of 250 km per hour, which became another record for a production car. In 1988, the firm created a new division called Jaguar Sport, dedicated to improving the speed and performance of the brand's vehicles. The first model presented, the XJ220, took its deserved highest place on the podium among the fastest production cars, and only the appearance of the McLaren F1 made it go down one line below. In 1989, Jaguar came under the control of the American company Ford Motor. Thanks to the support of the corporation, the company releases new interesting models without losing its individuality. So in 1996, the XK8 sports car was released, equipped with a number of the latest developments, among which it is especially worth noting the suspension control through the onboard computer. From 1989 to 2000, Jaguar consistently introduced the S-Type, F-Type and the X-Type, which became the flagships of the entire UK car industry at that time. In 2008, Jaguar was acquired by Tata Motors from India. A year later, the firm introduced the new XJ sedan with an aluminium body, wide wheelbase and a powerful engine. After 4 years of fruitful work, the company released the two-seater Jaguar F-Type Roadster, which was recognized as the sportiest car in the last 15 years. Under its hood, it is a 5-liter V8 engine with a 495 horsepower. In just 4.3 seconds, it can reach speed of up to 100 kilometers. The real hits of the 2013 were a couple of supercharged models, the Jaguar XJ sedan and the Jaguar XKRS JT for track days. Today, the company continues to develop in the direction of the production of a sports car and luxury sedans. Thank you all for attention and watching. Don't forget to subscribe and like. See you and bye bye.
In the English village, they found 30 vintage Jaguars in an old greenhouse. We quite often hear about various shaped finds, old cars, which for many years stood motionless in some abandoned building. But today, the stunning news has come about the discovery of 30 classic Jaguars in greenhouse. Someone just found them in an old greenhouse in the English village of Beaulieu. After the covers had been removed from the cars, it turned out that most of them were Jaguars E-Type. More than 30 classic Jaguars, mostly E-Type, most of which looked like they had stood there for a long time. That's what the owner said of the local company Beaulieu Garage about the find. I made an offer and now I have to decide what to do with a lot of rusty metal. Unfortunately, while greenhouses can protect cars from ultraviolet rays, it is often very humid inside. And now, imagine that in such a non-ideal environment, cars have been standing for about 30 years, and you will understand that museum pieces of them will no longer work. However, Beaulieu Garage has organized a sale of these cars, so you can still buy one. They say that some cars can be started up with minimal maintenance, while others will require much more efforts. Don't forget to subscribe and like it. Thanks for sharing and bye bye. A Jaguar E-Type restored to an amazing condition. A car restoration company has breathed new life into a vintage 1964 Jaguar E-Type Series 1 4.2 that has been rotting for 30 years on a private estate in Gloucestershire. You won't be able to recognize this unit after the real professionals worked on the car in a deplorable state. Now the price of this luxury Jaguar is £125,000. Don't forget to subscribe and like it. Thanks for sharing and bye bye. Jaguar E-Type with rust into the bargain for $125,000. You don't have to buy a new flagship car to stand out on the road. You can just get yourself a vintage roadster. This is exactly what happened with an unidentified collector of vintage cars who bought a very rare lot. For the rotten vintage Jaguar E-Type 1961 limited edition flat floor, which stood in the garage for 20 years, the collector paid $125,000 at auction. Now he has to spend the same record amount or even more for the restoration of this rusty Jaguar. And by the way, there are about 150 copies of such Jaguar E-Type in the rare modification of flat floor all over the world. Before that, this rare all-terrain vehicle was on the streets and its condition was slightly better than after it had stood for an unknown amount of time in the garage. Have you heard anything about this all-terrain vehicle before? What does the Jaguar XK120 look like after standing in the mountains for over 50 years? Another amazing find, which unfortunately looks quite depressing. This is the Jaguar XK120, a two-seater sports roadster that was in production for only 6 years from 1948 to 1954. The model is especially interesting as it was the first sports car after the war, which was launched into production. For ordering, the car was available as a closed and open two-seater roadster, with a removable roof, which is clearly visible in the photo. People could choose to order any arrangement of the steering wheel. In 6 years, almost 12,000 cars were produced and sold. It turns out that 2,000 units were produced per year. There were fantastic features per month, more than 160 cars. Under the hood, there was a 3.4-litre engine with a capacity of 160 horsepower, which allowed the car to accelerate to 133 miles per hour, which practically corresponds to 200 km per hour. This was more than 70 years ago. Now there are cars that can hardly get this speed. Initially, the bodies of roadsters were made entirely of aluminium, but since the 50s they switched to the steel as the demand for these cars went crazy and these cars were produced non-stop. But the doors, hood and trunk lid were still made of aluminium. The photo clearly shows the difference between the wing, which is rusted in places almost through it, and the perfect condition of the hood. How do you like it? It is sad that the owner abandoned such an interesting car. You can see a truck in the background. Did you recognize the manufacturer? The car is complete. It's sad that there is no introductions information about what happened to it and why they forgot about the car for 50 years. Judging by the number on the door, we can conclude that the roadster took part in some kind of competition, which was not unusual for this model. Interestingly, the car was often driven ruthlessly by both ordinary factory drivers and factory teams, with maximum modifications and improvements. Some craftsmen were able to get more than 250 horsepower. It is sad that their car never reached the finish line. Don't forget to subscribe and like it. Thanks for sharing and bye bye. Bar find from UK Jaguar XJS TWR, Rare P1 Alert and others. Tom, who is the host of the Barn Find Hunter show on Haggerty's YouTube channel, came to UK in search of exotic cars. The first thing he did was go to Pete, who owns an impressive collection of different classics. Right in Pete's yard is a Datsun 260Z 2+2, which he bought when he was 18-year-old student. It was once a standard, but very slow cope, so then got a new engine, automatic gearbox and a number of body modifications. Now, of course, it looks more like a pile of scrap metal. Next to it stands a much rare and more curious car. This is a Mercedes-Benz 500 SEC coupe with a tuning from the still independent, at that time, tuning studio AMG. The car is distinguished by its understated suspension, 5-spoke cast wheels and turbocharger, which significantly increases the output of the 5-litre engine. But the main highlight of Pete's collection is just a couple of meters from the Mercedes. This is the rarest coupe of Jaguar XJS TWR, one of only a few hundred of copies released between 1984 and 1988. At the time, a small TWR workshop was building racing cars, but several hundred copies of the modified XJS were made at Jaguar's request. They can be distinguished by the special two-color bodywork with a thin red stripe on the side. Under the hood, of course, was the 5.3-litre V12. Fortunately, Pete has not only such mossy car junk, although very rare. In the garage, there is a coal black Mercedes-Benz 500 SEC, also with a tuning from AMG and extended wheel arches, and a Pontiac Indy 500 race car, which was bought in the US in 2014. Pretty rare car. There were very few such cars made. The next stop was Richard's house, which has a very special car in the yard right on the street. This is a 1951 P1 Allard, which is in the hands of one family. That car was made for the factory racing team at the Monte Carlo Rally in a series of no more than 500 copies. Some models were equipped with Ford engines and latter with Cadillac engines. Don't forget to subscribe and like it. Thanks for sharing and bye-bye. Can you imagine buying a house and finding a unique Jaguar MK2 from the first 1,000 produced in the barn? While each of us only dreams of finding a classical forgotten car in an old barn, some are accidentally lucky. One of the real estate agents purchased land with a barn on the territory, the contents of which he did not know. To his surprise, a 1960 Jaguar MK2 was inside. The car is now out for sale for $14,900. Surprisingly, its body has only a little rust for a car that has stood motionless since 1983. Initially, the car was painted red with a red interior and red rims. It must be a killer combination. The seller claims that the original red can still be seen under the fresher black paint. Another important detail about this unit can be considered the fact that it is from the first 1,000 produced, namely 773rd in a row. The advertisement says the chrome parts are in fair condition and the windshield is still original. When you find a car of any model from the first 1,000 produced, especially with an original color combination, it is a huge success, which makes this unit a great find. The interior of the car has also been kept in a fairly decent condition even after standing a long time in a barn in the snowy state of Iowa. The engine won't start at this time, but there is some good news. The salesman plugged the car into an external power supply and all electrical systems were instantly brought back to life. There are no signs of damage to the timing chain or camshaft. The seller also confirms that the vehicle is fitted with the original transmission. While unpleasant surprises are possible, such information is still positive. Moreover, there are no traces of rust on the frame and its worst areas are on the doorstep on the passenger side. Would you take one for restoration? Don't forget to subscribe and like it. Thanks for sharing and bye-bye.
Hello my friends, welcome to my channel, Abandoned Places Around the World.
Hello dear friends and subscribers. In this issue, I have collected a huge collection of abandoned Jaguars from all over the world. In this video, you will see abandoned Jaguars that are simply left to rot on the city streets, in garages, backyards. Many cars are abandoned in fields and forests, and just like in the wild nature. So I always ask myself, why they do this? How can you do such things in relation to these luxurious legendary cars? Now let's just talk about the history of the Jaguar car brand while I show you these abandoned beauties.